Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be making my all-time favorite dessert, Pavlova. It is a meringue-based dessert, which is really crusty on the outside because the eggs make a shell, but the inside is really nice and soft, almost like marshmallowy, pillowy like. So it is a really easy dessert to make, but I think a lot of people get intimidated by it. I'm making this video today to teach you how to do that, but also to teach one of my best friends how to do this dessert because it's her all-time favorite dessert as well, and she just refuses to make it at home. So to start off, we're going to need some egg whites, granulated sugar, we're going to need some cornstarch, cream of tartar, and then just a little bit of salt. So I am going to begin by wiping my mixing bowl and the whisk that I'll be using with just regular vinegar. We want to make sure that nothing has any kind of oils or grease on it because it is very important for this dessert, for the egg whites to be properly whipped and stabilized so that the dessert will bake properly and not fall during the baking process or after the baking process. So I'm just going to wipe the bowl really well, and my whisk. I have my pot on the stove set to medium heat so that we can not cook our eggs, but for us to basically melt the sugar and into the egg whites so that we can whip them up. And this is going to be using the Swiss meringue style Pavlova. Most of the recipes that you see out online are going to be made with the French meringue. Basically, you take the egg whites and you whip them, and then you add sugar little by little until you reach a stiff peak. I find that for most recipes that I use, if it's required meringue, I use the Swiss method, which is just melting the sugar into the egg whites over a double broiler. It takes very little time compared to having to put the sugar in a little bit at a time, but it gives you a much stable meringue, and I think once you kind of get it down, it's super easy. It's really effortless. So we are going to start off by just measuring out the egg whites. I just have some egg whites left over from a previous recipe where I used up all the egg yolks, but none of my egg whites, so this is a good time to use them. If you do use whole eggs and you need to get the egg whites out of the way, just make sure that you're separating them and none of the egg yolk gets into the egg whites at all. Even if you have a small drop of egg yolk, you have to stop and just start over. But we're gonna go ahead and measure out our egg yolks and see how much we have, and that's gonna determine what I have for my the rest of my ingredients. Since I don't know how much this is, I'm just gonna measure it out and then go from there. All right, so we're just gonna go ahead and put our egg whites into the bowl. And I have, wow, actually exactly 152 grams of my egg whites. So we need to add sugar. For the Pavlova, you need to add about 1.6 to 1.7 times the egg whites. So I'm just gonna say that I have 151 grams of egg whites, and I'm gonna times it by we'll say 6.5. So I need about 250 grams of just granulated sugar. So I'm gonna measure out in a separate bowl so that I can add my cream of tartar and my salt and my cornstarch to this sugar and mix it in. and then add it to my egg whites. If I just try to add it all to the egg whites, they will clump up and it's gonna be really hard to whisk them in afterwards. So 250 grams of sugar is what we're gonna need. Okay. So then right into here, I am going to just put a pinch of salt. I like to put some salt into here because it does have a lot of sugar in this recipe, and the salt kind of cuts down a little bit on the sweetness. We also need about 15 grams of cornstarch in here. The cornstarch is going to help the meringue to stabilize, but also to prevent the pavlova from weeping during the baking process or after the baking process. As it sits, or if it's improperly whipped, what will happen is sugar particles will start to melt and kind of weep out of the pavlova. So this is going to help prevent that. But also doing the Swiss method really helps stopping that weeping process, because the sugar is incorporated into the egg whites very, very well. And then I'm only gonna put about half a teaspoon of cream of tartar in here, kind of a heaping teaspoon. This is going to help stabilize the egg whites, give it some really nice structure, and allow the egg whites to whip up to those really stiff peaks and hold up its shape while the pavlova is baking. So I'm just gonna mix it in to my egg whites so that we don't have any lumps, and I'm going to put it right into my egg whites, and we're gonna whisk them a little bit over the double broiler here. So here it is. I'm just going to use my KitchenAid whisk to whisk it so that I don't make any more dishes unnecessarily. Washing dishes is not my favorite thing to do. Okay, I'm just gonna whisk it and put it right over the double broiler, and I'm just gonna use my whisk to whisk this up. All I'm doing here is whisking it until the sugar melts, and when I touch it with my fingers, I'm not going to be feeling any of the sugar granules in here. And then we're going to put it onto the KitchenAid mixer and whisk it until we reach stiff peaks. So this will just take about a minute or two. You want to keep moving the entire time with your whisk so that you don't end up with scrambled egg whites. And in your water, or in your pot, you really only want about an inch of water or so. You don't need a lot. Okay, and then it's just gonna take a little bit longer. I just look for on the sides of my bowl, if I still see some granules of sugar, I know I'm not quite there, but as I see them disappear, then I start checking to see if I still have any granules between my fingers that I feel. And we're almost there, not quite, but almost. So as you can see, it's starting to kind of look like a slurry in here. It flows very smoothly when I lift it up, and when you feel in between, there's no sugar particles. So we're there. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my stove, and I'm gonna get this onto the KitchenAid. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in. In some of the recipes, you'll see people adding, instead of the cream of tartar, they will add vinegar. I am not a huge fan of adding vinegar to my pavlova because I feel like it has a lot of the vinegar taste left over. I'm gonna add just like to this, I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of drop of it, like literally a quarter of this cap full into there. I am only gonna add just a little bit so that when the egg whites are whipping, they can incorporate a little bit of the vinegar in there, and it will give them a much whiter look. You can also use lemon juice, but my preferred method is going to be the cream of tartar. Otherwise, like I said, I feel like the vinegar leaves too much of a weird taste. So we are going to whip this on level 2 for 2 minutes, level 4, 10 minutes, level 6, 2 minutes, at which point I will check to see what our peaks are looking at like. We should be getting really a lot of volume in our egg whites, and we should have a stiff peak. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll see you guys in about 15 minutes. Okay, friends. This is what our meringue looks like. It is really thick. I don't know how well you can see, but it's really thick. It feels almost marshmallowy here. It's kind of hard for me to even try to like whisk it with my hand to get it all the way from the bottom. But this is exactly what we're looking for. It's really sturdy, which is going to give us a very beautiful pavlova. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my baking sheet ready. I have my air bake sheet. If you don't have one of these, just take a regular baking sheet and turn it upside down and bake on this side. You can use parchment paper if you would like, or if you have a silicone or a Teflon mat, you can use that. You don't need to spray it down with any oil or anything like that. You just need to make sure that if it's not parchment paper, that your surface is completely grease free. So I'm just going to use that same paper towel that I used earlier in the video to clean the bowl, and I'm just going to wipe down this baking mat really well. This baking mat I got on Amazon. I don't use it very often, but I do like it for purposes like this. It has the rings on here, so this is kind of what I'm gonna use as a template for my pavlova. And I am going to just clean off my spatula real quick too, so no grease at all touches any of my beautiful meringue. It's so thick, it's like having a hard time coming out of the... Okay, I'm just going to use my spatula and put all of this right onto here. And then we're going to use a spatula and then offset spatula to kind of shape it. I like to have my pavlovas as one big cake. You can use your piping bag, or again with the spatula, and make smaller cakes. You will have to bake it a lot shorter because they're going to bake really pretty quick. So I have 2 spatulas that I'll be using, a large one and a small one. We'll see how things go here. But basically, I have it into a big mound here, and I'm just going to spread it to the to this line here, to the last circle. And if you hear clicking, that's just my dogs dogging. Okay. So you do want this to be pretty tall, and I like to have kind of, once I have it shaped more or less, I like to have sort of like a divot inside, or like a little bit lower, so that I have somewhere to put my whipped cream into, and also to have the fruit. So for this, I'm going to make a chantilly cream, which is kind of like a whipped cream, but it's a lot less sweet. And then I'm going to make a really simple strawberry type jam thing. Okay, so I'm going to use my, we'll start with the small offset spatula. So I'm just gonna spread this around. And Pavlova doesn't have to be like super beautiful. You can make it kind of rustic looking. When I first started making this, I did turn my oven. I preheated it to 275 degrees without convection. When I put this into the oven, I'm going to turn it down to 212 degrees, I believe. And it's going to bake. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. So you're almost not baking it, you're pretty much like drying out the meringue actually. So that's why the temperature has to be sort of low, and it is a bit of a process for it to sit there in the oven. So I'm just going to take and like lift up the edges some to give it a little bit more structure on the top. But really you can just do whatever you want, however you want it to look. So when we get this into the oven, it's going to bake, we're going to keep an eye on it for about 80 to 90 minutes, depending on, you know, what your oven is like. But it should stay white. It shouldn't get dark. It might, you know, get a little bit of a brown, but you want it to stay as light as possible. It's gonna have a very nice like crust on the outside, but really beautiful and marshmallowy on the inside. And then I am going to leave it in the oven overnight so that it can completely dry out on the outside. If you pull it out too quick, it's going to fall. It's gonna, you know, settle down some, but if you take it out too quick, you're gonna end up with a lot of cracks in your pavlova, and you don't want any of that. So it's best to leave it in the oven for at least 4 hours. So once it's done baking, you're just going to turn off the oven, and then you're just going to leave this in there. I don't usually even open my door, especially if I'm gonna leave it overnight, so it's going to finish doing whatever it needs to do. You can open the door for a little bit and let some of the hot air out, but otherwise you're just gonna leave it in there. If you're going to leave it in the oven overnight, I recommend that you turn on your oven light inside. Typically I would say don't ever bake with it on. It gives extra heat, and it can actually make your oven fluctuate in the temperature. But for these purposes, if you leave it overnight, we do want the oven light to stay on, because it's going to give off just enough heat to keep the pavlova dry and prevent that weeping that I talked about. So here we are. I feel like we're ready. It's not exactly, you know, perfect looking thing, but it's not supposed to. It's supposed to look a little rustic. It's got a little dome in there, which is where we're gonna put our chantilly cream. And we're going to be putting in the berries. So let's get it into the oven, and then I will see you guys tomorrow when it is ready to come out and we'll put it all together. Here is our beautiful jam that's been sitting in the fridge overnight. I added some fresh strawberry pieces in here that weren't cooked as part of a jam just to give it some extra freshness. And we will be topping our pavlova with this. So, there you go. Beautiful, easy strawberry jam. Friends, our pavlova is done. It sat overnight in the oven with the oven light on so that it could continue to dry out and not do that weeping thing that we talked about. So here it is. I have an offset spatula that I'm just gonna use to unmold it. If you have the silicone mat, you should be able to just peel it off. Let's see. Oh, that is gorgeous. So here it is. You can see that it's not, super perfect. It does have a couple cracks in here, but that's okay. It has pretty deepish indent here so that we can put our toppings in. It's very, very light. Okay, I'm gonna try to see. And right before I took this out to show you, I made just some chantilly cream, which is a very easy, not super sweet whipped cream. I just put the bowl in the freezer with the whisk for about 10-15 minutes. I eyeballed my whipped cream. I put about a cup of heavy cream in here with about a tablespoon of sifted powdered sugar. And I did maybe quarter of a teaspoon of almond extract. You can use vanilla, I just decided to do almond. We're just gonna put that right on top here. However much you want. I like it. That looks good. And then I'll use my offset spatula to just spread it right on here. And you want to serve this right away. If you're not going to serve it right away, then I would recommend not adding the whipped cream or any of the toppings until you're ready. You can store your pavlova without any toppings in an airtight container until you need it for about 24 hours, then it's gonna start to kind of lose its shape and shine. And then this is the strawberry jam that we made yesterday, so I'm just gonna put that on top. You can use basically any toppings. I know lemon curd, kiwis are really popular with this, but the nice thing is that our strawberries aren't super sweet, and neither is our whipped cream, so that should give a very nice balance. I like that. I think it looks beautiful. What do you guys think? Okay, so we'll cut into it and then serve it and see what it looks like on the inside. Now is the time to cut our pavlova dessert. I am really excited to see what it looks like on the inside. So the inside should be kind of soft and marshmallowy. I'm gonna try to fit it onto this plate I got in Canada last year. It's the first time using it. Oh, I want a big piece. Ooh, that's lovely. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this pretty well, but the inside is nice and soft, and the outside is like a hard meringue. And then we've got the soft, pillowy whipped cream, with the strawberries. It's gonna be a winning combination. So I hope you guys liked this video and it made it really easy for you to follow and make this really delicious, but super easy dessert. It's not really as intimidating as you think. Please let me know if you have any questions, but give this recipe a try. Good luck. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.